Today, the House takes up President Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus bill. Sometime tomorrow, the Democratic-led chamber is expected to approve the measure. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is dismissing fears that the package is so big it will cause an inflation problem. She says that if it turns out to be inflationary, there are tools to deal with that. And the OECD says that a U.S. economic recovery turbocharged by the new stimulus package will help power a faster than expected global upswing. The Paris-based organization said it now expects global output to rise above pre-pandemic levels by the middle of this year. But looking ahead to the Biden administration's next legislative hurdle, infrastructure, his upcoming long-term economic stimulus package will face far tougher obstacles in Congress, with plans to address infrastructure, climate, healthcare, inequality, and much more over the next decade. The initiative is far more complex. Here to discuss is Bloomberg News' chief Washington correspondent, Kevin Cirilli. Hey, Kevin, look, we're already talking about this next stimulus proposal. What can you tell us about it?
Well, look, I think in terms of infrastructure, the administration has not put a price tag number on this in terms of how much money they are going to spend. I've been talking to lawmakers who have met with President Biden to discuss infrastructure on both sides of the aisle. And they're saying that the president is arguing that there be a reverse strategy in terms of starting with a list almost of the projects related to infrastructure that need to be discussed, and as opposed to starting with this is the amount of money that we are willing to spend. Now, the American Society of Civil Engineers, which is one of the top groups that works with these types of issues, especially on infrastructure, has put that price tag at around $3 trillion. It's a ton of money. It's much more money than the $1.9 trillion worth of stimulus that have been discussed now and is being moved through the House. But candidly, I don't think Republicans are going to be able to get on board with spending that lump of change.
But isn't infrastructure spending, Kevin, isn't it relatively popular with the American people? Don't Republicans, wouldn't they be serving their constituents if they did spend? I mean, this is bipartisan, right? Infrastructure spending.
You know, it's a great point, but reining in government spending and reining in the national debt is also very popular with Republicans. And so it's one of those nuances in polling that is very difficult, I think, for Republicans to look through. But beyond this, yesterday I spoke with Secretary of Veterans Affairs Dennis McDonough. He, of course, is former President Obama's chief of staff. He has also been served at the National Security Council. He was the Deputy National Security Advisor in the Obama administration. And I asked him point blank, Mr. Secretary, you know, how does this administration want to create jobs in the post-pandemic economy that, quite frankly, aren't going to come back, right? And it's very difficult, I think, for policymakers to admit that, but it's the reality from all of the economic data that we've seen. And he brought up the issue of the semiconductor chip shortage that President Biden and others on both sides of the aisle have raised in the global supply chain with China. And what he said was if America was able to crack that code, that there could be manufacturing jobs domestically. So the idea of now tying national security implications to global supply chains, to manufacturing domestic jobs, is a new pitch, but it's an incredibly important one as we talk about these issues like infrastructure in the months ahead.
So Joe Manchin of West Virginia has said that he doesn't want to see a repeat of what happened with the most recent relief package happen again in the future, not getting any Republican buy-in. How does the Biden administration avoid that from happening in this next bill?
The Biden administration would say that they're talking to Republicans at the gubernatorial and state level and local level and mayoral level. But to Chairman Manchin's point, there are many Republicans in the Senate who feel a little bit slighted at the result of this political capital that the administration has expended. But beyond that, there are a lot of Democratic progressives who feel slighted at the political capital that the administration used because of the issue of the minimum wage.
What about earmarks? Our colleagues point out that Democrats have announced that earmarks will be included in the infrastructure proposal that will allow bargaining, Kevin.
Everyone loves earmarks, right?
I think
you
tell me. Do they?
That could be some political poker chips that are played.
Okay. Hey, Kevin, I can't let you go without talking about the minimum wage and what the latest is from Washington when it comes to minimum wage. Not even full Democratic support for a $15 minimum wage. What can you tell us about how Democrats are planning to make good on this promise?
It's a really tricky issue for Democrats in heartland states to navigate. Look at Senator Tester, Senator Sinema, Senator Manchin. they want Americans to have a higher minimum wage, but they also know that these small businesses in rural America aren't able to afford $15 an hour. I'm not talking about large financial Fortune 20 institutions. I'm talking about literally restaurants that have been forced to shut down over the past year, to then ask them, and many of those CEOs of these restaurants, mind you, are Democrats, to then ask them to pay out $15 an hour is a really difficult calculation for them to make.
Bloomberg Chief Washington Correspondent Kevin Cirilli. Kevin, it's always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.